My name's Elisha. I'm 34 years old. I'm a faithful believer in Jesus Christ and a child of God. I'm here today to share my messes and my tests in life and how God's turned them into a message and a testimony. Starting out in life, I was born a fetal baby, which is born addicted to drugs and alcohol. My mother and father both battled with drugs and alcohol since they were teenagers, as well as mental illness for my mother. She was raised in a very abusive, toxic relationship as well, which then bled into my childhood of her finding what was normal in her life being sexual abuse, physical abuse, and emotional abuse being normal. So unfortunately, that left me going through all the same things that she went through. Her mother willingly allowed things to happen to her that was happening, and she willingly allowed things that were happening to me to happen as well. That was tough. But so she ended up losing. Well, let me backtrack. My dad walked away when I was 4, so we grew up a lot in homeless shelters or women's shelters, bouncing all over. Nothing really stable or consistent in my life. My mother, very still abusive, allowing abuse to happen in multiple ways, sexually, physically, mentally, for both me and my brother. So finally, come the age of 8, we got removed by the state of Michigan. My mom actually decided after we got taken that she was going to sign off her rights on us. So that left the state to raise me and my brother the remainder of our childhood. During that time, I went through 26 different placements from the age of 8 until I was 16. That was tough. I went through a lot of what I went through with my birth mom, just in different families and different locked facilities, even where the staff members were obviously not safe people. But I had nobody there to protect me from any of that, and so I ran away a lot. But nobody ever stopped to think about why I kept taking off. They just see me as a troubled child that they couldn't get their grips on. So I finally, so backtrack a little bit. When I was 16, I got pregnant, and I had an abortion. Because at that time, when I was 16, it was my CPS worker, actually, that ended up adopting me. It was soon after she took me in that I ended up getting pregnant. And I was given an ultimatum of either having the baby, and I would go to a group home for teen girls that were awarded the court, where they could keep me there until I was 21, or I could abort the baby and I could keep my family that I finally had. So of course, at that age and with everything I'd been through and all I wanted was a family, I did what I thought was the best decision, and I aborted the baby. Soon after that, I ended up meeting my now ex-husband. We got married. I was 17 years old, moved to Texas. Things were really good for the first few years until he went off on his first deployment, and I was pregnant with our first son, and I had him 2 weeks before he deployed to Iraq. And at that point, I was all alone with the baby and not knowing whether or not my husband was going to make it home. So that in itself was quite a challenge to get through, but I did. I got through it. I had a couple more children after that. He went to another deployment to Iraq, where he did another year-long tour. It was shortly after that second tour that I got hit by a drunk driver and had to have neck surgery. At the time, though, when the accident happened, I was only a few months pregnant with my second son, because of the car accident, I actually had to go in for an ultrasound, and I was like 12, 13 weeks, somewhere in there. Well, when I had my abortion, I was 12 or 13 weeks, and I didn't realize it was an actual baby because of how it was described to me, as if it wasn't even a baby yet. But this is where I realized that it was a baby. It was actually after this accident, and I had this ultrasound done that showed me an actual baby, and luckily my little guy was okay. Everything was fine, but a harsh reality for me set in about what I had done when I was 16 years old to a baby of mine. So I battled with a deep depression after that, and I stopped talking with my adopted mom for a while after that because I held a lot of anger and resentment towards her, because at that point I realized, it was an actual baby that I did that too. So anyways, I had to wait until after I had my son, and I went in and had neck surgery. During that period of time, my now ex-husband was in the process of getting medically discharged from the military. So we had a 4-bedroom home, a toddler, and a newborn, and PCSing back home to Michigan, and having to pack up a 4-bedroom house with just the two of us, on top of me just having neck surgery. Well, the doctors down there had prescribed me like a 3-month supply of all my pain medications because I was supposed to be on bed rest strictly for a month. However, I wasn't able to do bed rest because I had a 4-bedroom house I needed to pack up so we could get moved back to Michigan. That was when my battle began with painkillers. And it didn't take long before it completely ruined everything in my life. It literally was like something that took my soul. I slowly stopped caring about my husband, my children, myself, my family, my friends. I pretty much cut everybody off, and my main priority was to make sure that no matter what, I had some kind of painkillers to live on every day. So got moved back to Michigan. Within a month of being back, I got in trouble with the law. My pain doctor up here that I went and got set up with, they found marijuana in my system, so they cut me off from my painkillers. And with that being said, I had just gotten my settlement money from my car accident I got into, so I made a trip downstate to go pick up painkillers, and I got pulled over, and I got in a lot of trouble. That was the start. I got bonded out of jail, was waiting for court. Next thing you know, I'm in another county, and I'm driving through, and we get pulled over, and I had marijuana on me. So I got another drug charge. I smuggled the marijuana into the correctional facility, which made it, at that point, a high felony charge. So more severe. Well, I got bonded out on that. And then in another county, around New Year's, we were driving back from a New Year's Eve party where we got pulled over, and I had less than a gram on me of marijuana. But at that point, I was a habitual offender, and my third drug charge in 3 months in 3 different counties. And so I ended up going to jail and wasn't able to get out. They actually sentenced me to a county year. And during that time, I still had court proceedings in these other 2 counties. Well, luckily, I got 6 months in one county, and then the other county ran everything concurrent with the county year that I did. So by the grace of God is the only way to explain that, because I was looking at 10 years in prison for my first charge because I had so many narcotics on me and a large sum of money and scales. And yeah, so I know that was God's hand in my life right there. So I get out of jail after doing my county year. I started smoking weed again, and I go to see my probation officer, and I drop dirty for marijuana. And at this point, they were just sick of dealing with me not following the rules and just doing whatever it is that I wanted to do. So my probation officer violated me for a dirty THC drop. When I went back in front of the judge, she agreed with my PO that I did not know how to follow rules or directions, and that I deserved a more severe punishment for it. So I got sentenced to the Huron Valley Women's Prison in Ypsilanti. And if I got boot camp, then I'd only have to do 90 days. However, if I wasn't approved for boot camp, I'd have to do 2 years. Luckily, I was approved for boot camp. But that was 90 days of hell. But I got through that. But during my period of time there, I had gotten served with divorce papers. So I knew when I got out of prison I was no longer going to have my family. And at that point I pretty much understood why. So when I got out, I came out with absolutely nobody and nothing, and I didn't know what I was going to do or where to go or what was going to happen from there. So I ended up putting myself into a rehab because I knew at least I didn't want to go back to painkillers. I didn't want to resort back to drugs. So I really did try to do the right thing and get help and stay in a good atmosphere. However, while I was there, the owner's husband decided he wanted to make a lot of sexual remarks to me and made me really uncomfortable to the point that I ended up leaving. I left there. I went to a halfway house. At the halfway house, I was there. Everything was going really good. I had gotten a job. I was able to start seeing my 3 kids. Everything was going great until I broke my phone. I broke my phone, went and got a new one. I let my supervising agent know that my phone had broke, and then I had gotten a new one, so I gave her my new number. Well, she showed up the next day, and she arrested me and took me to jail for having 2 phones, even though I only had 1 phone. My other one broke. That's why I called her and gave her my new number. So I sat in jail for about 10 days before my actual PO found out I was in jail, and she was pretty upset because she didn't sign off on me to be arrested. It would have been her job to do that. And she did not do that. So because of that, they actually let me off from probation early and took off my tether early, and I was released from any kind of probation. However, in that 10 days, my now ex-husband was able to go to the front of the court, and he said, look, my ex-wife, she hasn't even been out of prison for a few months yet, and she's already back in jail, so that's staying inconsistent. So they stopped my visitations with my children. At that point, I was just, I was super depressed. I didn't know what to do. I hadn't even done anything wrong, and everything. The only reason I was off probation and everything was because of their mistake, but at that point it was too late. So I started selling meth as a means to survive. It was really good money and easy to do and make. And then came the day that I wanted to try it and see what it was all about. That was a mistake because I didn't know 4 years into it that I was going to be 4 years into it. It was the only thing I could do to try to escape the reality of all the pain and loss and rejection I'd been through in my life. I still knew all of that, but at the same time, with meth, it just made it where I was okay with it at that point. I guess I felt like I deserved everything I'd gotten in my life at that point. It was justifiable to me. But it was a lot of terrible things that it turned me into. Things that I would have never done, never been like. It was like almost every part of who I was no longer there anymore. To the point that even when I looked at myself, I didn't know who I was anymore, and I didn't like who I was looking at. And I finally hit my rock bottom, and I was just tired of the life. I was tired of, the men I was getting with, because they were just abusive and awful. I went through a lot of abuse with, especially my daughter, Liliana. Her dad was just a very damaged soul himself, to say it nicely. And because of the things he went through as a child, that came out on me. And I know that now because God's really been working with me to show me the bad things that have happened to me in my life, and how I got to take that person out of the equation and look at what's attached to that person and making them do the things that they're doing, which makes sense because when I was on meth, I was doing things that I would never have done either. the drugs, there's demons. That's just all there is to it. There's darkness attached to those things, and that's why it turns people the way that it does. So during my meth addiction, I was not a good person. I don't really want to go into full detail about too much, but there's a lot of things in my addiction that I regret. I got to the point that I was even selling myself, and oh my goodness, it was just awful. It was awful to get to that point, that I was actually degrading myself to that point and selling myself for drugs, something that wasn't even making me feel any better, But then at that time too, I had 2 more children during my drug use, no dads in their lives, and I had to make sure they had food and everything that they needed on top of my addiction. It was a really tough lesson in life to learn, that you can't do drugs and parent in a healthy way. It just is not possible. I mean, I did the best that I could considering, but looking back now, I realize my children deserve so much more than that. So Christmas morning about 3 years ago, I was leaving actually the drug house, and I was driving down the road, and the whole road was just pure ice. And next thing you know, I lose control and I'm spinning out doing donuts, and the next thing you know, my car starts putting and it's running out of gas, and then it completely dies. So I'm spinning out doing donuts, I run out of gas, and my battery dies. And I break down right in front of this older gentleman's house, which at the time I did not know whose house it was. All I knew is that I had no phone at the time. It was in the middle of winter, it was super cold, it was miles away before I could get anywhere that I even knew anybody. So I had no choice but to go up to this home and interrupt this Christmas morning with a family, I thought. Well, it took me about 20-30 minutes to get up the nerve to come to the door, and I finally did. When I got up to the door, it was this older gentleman that was actually alone, and unfortunately his wife had passed away 4 years prior to this, so he didn't really have anybody up here. And he was all alone on Christmas, and he was so nice, and just he came right out and he helped me. He pulled my vehicle into his driveway, and then he took me up to the Shell gas station, and he put $20 in a gas can, and he came back and he put that in my car, and then he hooked up jumper cables to my vehicle and gave it a jump, and we sat inside for about 15-20 minutes just talking. And he's like, well, I'm sure you gotta go, and yeah, I gotta get to my kids. So I left. Well, about a week later, I was driving by again, and I seen that he was home, so I backed up and I came in and told him thank you again so much for the kind things that he did to help me out. And little did I know just what kind of great friendship that was going to lead to, and how much he was going to change everything for me in my life. Because up until him, I did not trust men. I did not like men. I had a really bad outlook on people in general, because I've just been so let down in my life, and especially on men, because I've been hurt a lot by men. But this man has shown me unconditional love. He just wanted to help me because he wanted to help me, not with any kind of expectations of anything other than he cared about me and wanted to help me out. And I think that's where God especially started the process of getting me out of my dark place, out of that pit. He brought this really good person into my life that was going to be there for me throughout this process, and he was nothing but encouraging and taught me a lot, and quieting down and taking time to listen, and just how to really care about somebody and love somebody, even through a really hard time in their life. And he didn't know me from Adam. He didn't have to step up and show me any kind of love or care or anything. But now here we are going on 4 years later, and my kids call him Grandpa, and he's more like a father figure to me than anything, the father that I never had. Just even the friend that I never had. He's almost like an earth angel, God sent him here just to show me that not everybody is the same, and not everybody wants to use me or abuse me or hurt me, or which opened up the doorway for my now husband, for me to actually give him an opportunity for us to be something. So before I went to jail, I had this experience where, I was just really crying out to God because I really wanted to have something different in my life. Like, I was so tired of the drugs. I was so tired of the drug lifestyle. I was so tired of just being tired. And I begged God to just save me, rescue me. If he was there, if he was real, just save me, And a couple days after that, I actually had a vision, and God had came to me, and it told me about a lot of the awful things I'd been doing, and why it was wrong, but also where that was taking me in my life. And he said, look, if you do not change your life within the next 30 days, you're going to die, and you're going to go to hell for eternity. That was a wake-up call for me. I gave away the rest of the dope I had to my buddy. I said I didn't want no part in it no more. It just scared the crap right out of me. I didn't really know what to think, because I was like, man, that day that had happened, I was high, but I wasn't super high or anything, so I just was really freaked out by it, because there was something in that had happened, and I knew that there was some truth behind that's what I had experienced. So I gave away the rest of my dope. I told my buddy I was done, and I was serious about it until the next day came. And another one of my friends came around, and they're like, well, why don't you just get high until you get caught by the cops? And that's pretty much all it took, was him justifying me getting high until I got caught. So I'm like, okay, that works. Well, later on that day, because of what had happened during my vision, God also told me about this gentleman named, to find Donovan, that he would be able to help me. And I was like, well, the only Donovan I knew was my buddy Sean's brother. And I'm like, I told Sean, I said, look, we need to go find your brother, and I need to talk with him, because he's going to be able to help me with this. And he was like, well, I don't know if he's home. I said, well, we're going to go find out if he's home. So we packed up the kids, and we drove over there, and he was home. And, Sean went and talked to him first, explained to him some of the things that I was experiencing. And he came over to talk to me, and I told him, I said, look, this is going to sound so crazy. I was like, but, I was told by God that you're going to be the one to help me. I was like, but I've been dealing with a lot of demonic things, a lot of just dark things, and I need help. I'm in a bad addiction, and I want to be freed from it, and I don't know how to get there, but I know that you can help me. And so he told me, well, I'll come over tomorrow around noon, sit down and talk with you a little bit more about it. So he did, and we came over the next day, and we all sat down and we were talking, and he asked me if I was really ready to change my life, and that, with that being said, it was going to take me changing everything I ever knew, and changing my whole life around, like behaviors, thoughts, responses, coping, everything that I knew was going to have to change, because it was all unhealthy, and none of it was of God. Little did I know that day when I decided to dedicate my life to God, that evening the cops were going to show up. And they beat on the door, and my buddy, actually, he had a warrant for his arrest too. They ended up taking him to jail. They told me, we're going to give you a week, get things situated with your children, and then come turn yourself in. Well, I didn't get myself turned in. I just took off with my children. And at that point, fear just kicked in. I didn't know what to do. I knew I wanted a new life, and I wanted away from drugs, but I was so wrapped up in the drugs that even though I wanted away from them so bad, they just had such a grip on me that there was no escaping them. They were always going to be wherever I was, one way or another, and it sucked. But so I'm over at a different friend's house, and then next thing you know, we were there for about 2 weeks, and next thing you know, boom, 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 here's the cops again. And honestly, at that point, I was just relieved, because I've been running for years, and I was just ready to get it over with. And at this point, I knew this was God's plan. He knew that I needed to be locked away, where I had no access to drugs, where I had nothing but time to clear out my mind, and where I could talk with this gentleman, Donovan, and learn about God, and really start to build that connection and relationship, and learn about just how much God loves me, even though I fell off and I was in a dark place for a long time. He still loved me, and he cared about me enough to pull me out of that pit and to clean me off of all my sins, all my wrongdoings. And he literally gave me a new heart. And it's hard to explain until you experience it yourself, but there was a daily surrendering that I was doing, of surrendering all these things of myself to God. And the more that I surrendered, and the more that I just trusted God in changing me, the more change that actually happened. And I went from a raging know-it-all that you couldn't tell nothing. I wouldn't listen to law enforcement. I wouldn't listen to judges or probation officers. I wouldn't listen to nobody. It didn't matter who you were. I wasn't going to listen to you. But Donovan came in my life, and all I could do was listen to him. I wanted to listen to him. Anything that he told me to do, I did. Because I knew that God told me that I could trust this man, and that he was going to be able to teach me the things that I needed to know in order to grow with God. And he did that. So I did end up getting a county year, which was another touch of God, because when I went into the courtroom, the judge had every intention on sending me to prison for 5 to 10 years. And I was just praying the whole time. And the judge is like, give me one good reason why I shouldn't send you to prison today. I intend to for 5 years. And I said, well, I said, my attorney wasn't making you aware of the things I had made him aware of. And there was a lack of communication, where I did try to get my court cases rescheduled, and she asked my attorney if that was true. He agreed, said I made several attempts to make contact with him in his office to reschedule court. There was miscommunication. So the judge actually waived my attorney fees and gave me 2 county years, which truly was what I needed. At the time, I was pretty upset, because I was like, I'm going to be incarcerated away from my kids, not able to do what I want anymore, and it hit me really hard at first. But as time went on, I realized this was God giving me a time out to really get what I asked for, which was a new life. And the only way he could do that was by pulling me out of my environment and putting me into something completely different, and somewhere where he could actually have nothing but my time. Because I was at rock bottom. I was in complete desperation, and I knew the only one that could save me was God. And that's really who I wanted to save me at that point, was God. He sounds absolutely amazing, because he is amazing. So anyways, throughout my county year, me and Donovan got closer and closer. I was having dreams. He was, God was speaking with him, and we came to the conclusion that God had, planned for us to actually get married. Which everybody said we were crazy and that we were fools for that. So, of course, we got married on April Fool's Day, because that is what God wanted, was for us to get married, and he's the best thing that's happened to me, honestly. I've learned a lot from him, as I continue to learn a lot from him, but it's because of his faith in God and his connection with God, and I find that just very attractive, because I want that as well. I want the same things that he's wanting with God, and I want those things with God as well. So we have a really beautiful relationship, one that I've never experienced before in my life. I've never had such a healthy, loving, patient, understanding relationship before. So I know that was another big blessing from God, absolutely. So while I was in jail, growing with God, reading my Bible, surrendering things to him, it was about 5 months into my stay. I was a trustee in the jail, and I actually came down to be the only female in the jail at the time, and the only female trustee. Well, unfortunately, one of the guards there decided to take advantage of the situation, and I was sexually assaulted in one of the front offices when I was up cleaning it for the police station, which I won't touch base on that too much, because I'm actually still dealing with that in the court system. However, I've prayed about it, and I've chosen to forgive him for what he did. I don't justify what he did because what he did was wrong. But I also understand where people leave doorways open, and when you leave doorways open, that's room for demonic to come in, and those are the ones truly making the attack. So I've been able to look past him in that situation, forgive him, and move on from that. However, initially it was not that easy. I was pretty angry at God because instantly I started blaming God, because how in the world is this going to happen to me in a jail of all places? Like, especially after I just devoted my life to God. I read the Bible faithfully every day, surrendered all this stuff. Like, I just don't understand how such a great, loving God was going to let something, like another sexual trauma happen to me again. So I was blaming God for it at first. I was very angry. I stopped reading my Bible and everything. But boy, was I wrong. That was not God's doing by any means. I've learned throughout, now the past 6 months about, there's awful things that happen in the world, yes. But here's the thing, like, God gave us all free will. So we all have the right to make our own choices. He doesn't pick and choose who he's going to stop or not stop. That's the thing about free will, is we all have the right to make our own choices. But with that being said, just like there's God, there's the devil. And the devil comes in on traumas and wounds and areas that, are vulnerable, and demons attach, and they manipulate a person's minds, actions, thoughts, all of that. And with that being said, they, people do things that they wouldn't otherwise do, So I've been able to forgive a lot of the awful things that have happened to me because I don't look at that person anymore. I look at what was potentially attached to that person. Because God's people don't just go around hurting people, but God's people can be susceptible to demons attaching themselves and altering your mindset and everything. It's crazy. What you think are your thoughts are not actually even your thoughts, but they're in there so much that you become, you think it's normal. You think that is just like your thought process, but it wasn't truly until I surrendered everything to God in my life and had demonic attacks and started to learn the difference of my own actual thoughts and when the demonic was trying to afflict me or come into my mind and make me think things that were not true or alter things for me. So that's a whole other story in itself. So when I got out of jail, I got married April Fool's Day. Everything's been great, wonderful. Of course, not without some kinds of test and just things from my past that I'd done wrong that I still had to deal with the consequences of. My kids got put into the system when I went to jail, so I was, fighting for my kids to get them out of foster care. And at first, it didn't look too good, but with just staying strong with God, praying, and building that faith with Him. Now I'm actually getting my children back in a month. They'll be back home for good. So that's absolutely God's doing as well. And not only that, my first 3 kids I also have back in my life. Only phone calls right now, but I know God's going to definitely help smooth that over and get it to where we actually have visitations and I can rebuild the things that I broke with my first 3 children as well. Okay, so some things about what I struggled with. I had a lot of anxiety issues, insecurities, jealousies. So let me start with my ex-husband's girlfriend. At first I was very hateful about her. I felt like she had took my family, and I just despised her. I couldn't even stand the thought of the girl, Where now, since I've accepted Christ into my heart and I've really surrendered these things to God, I've reached out to her and I want nothing but a friendship. I tell her thank you for being there for my children. I tell her I really want to build some kind of friendship with you, because I feel like that's what's best for our kids, especially for us all to have just a common respect for one another, and that we are all in one way, shape, or form parenting these children. So everything about how negative I was towards her turned into just very positive, very loving, very understanding, and just forgiving, Even with my ex-husband, I'm very kind to him, understanding why he was hurt, why he made some of the choices he made. But I'm also wanting to fix those things. I'm not trying to not hold myself accountable, but I just want to be able to fix the things I broke and have a healthy co-parenting relationship with him as well. With my adoptive mom, I used to be very bitter towards her. I held a lot of my anger towards her that wasn't necessarily all meant for her, but I took it out on her because she did love me, and I felt like no matter what, she'd still be there, which is not right, and she didn't deserve that. But now, since I've accepted Christ, I've really reached out to her a lot and let her know just how sorry I am and how much I love her and how much she means to me. And I'm really just trying to be that good daughter that she deserves, and try to reassure her by just my actions to show her that I have changed and I have learned, but also that I am a child of God, and that shows through me, that God is working through my life. The courts now, it's amazing because I love my probation officer. She's absolutely an amazing woman. I faithfully go there every 2 weeks. I'm early, I sit there and I tell her about all the great things that are happening, and I actually look forward to seeing her, where before I would never even show up to report to probation. Cops, when I see them, I'm not scared of them anymore. I'm actually kind of hoping they come up to me so I can tell them about all the good things that I've changed in my life and why, because of God, that way I can send out the message about God to them too, because they especially know how bad off I was. So I look forward to them knowing who I am now. It's pretty cool. The judge, even, I have the utmost respect. I understand that she has a job to do, or that he has a job to do. And I respect that, I was in the wrong, and I hold myself accountable, and I appreciate the fact that they hold me accountable, because with them holding me accountable, it made me have to hold myself accountable and actually have to change, So I just have a whole different outlook on the court system, on police officers, on probation officers. I'm very appreciative of those people, because they do have a difficult job to do. And truly, all they want to do is help. It's just, we got to want to help ourselves too, in order for them to actually be able to be there for us the way that they're trying to be. Let's see, what else? People in general, I'm not judgmental. I don't, if I hear somebody's using drugs, I try to just teach them about God and how God's, taken my addiction from me, and that, if they truly want change, to just turn their life over to God and reach out for Him and surrender their drug addiction to Him, and that He will take it, because He did for me. I just want people to know the truth of God, and I'm very proud of that. So we make t-shirts now, actually, too, to share about recovery and God and just the message there, and I love wearing those shirts and having people ask questions, because then I can kind of express a little bit about what I've been through and what Jesus has saved me from. So before in my life, my outlook was very negative, very dark, very sinister. I was angry at the world. I just had no hope. I was super depressed, very angry. I didn't trust nobody. I didn't even trust myself. I got to the point that I tried to take my life multiple times. I was just tired of feeling what I was feeling. I was tired of hurting people. I was tired of being hurt, I just given up, but I know God saved my life, because what I did to kill myself, I should be dead. There's no reason other than God why I'm here today, After God came into my life, when I finally allowed Him, He's always been in my life, but when I finally allowed Him in and I surrendered my life to Him, I've been, even in tough times, I'm still hopeful, I'm still positive. I still decide to look at the good things that are still happening in my life, rather than focusing on all the negatives, because one thing I've learned about God is anything that is negative, He always turns into something good, because that's who God is good, and He'll always take the dark and turn it into light, And that's just an amazing feeling, amazing outlook, and with that, I'm just a happy person. I love being around people. I love life, birds, trees, the outdoors, I love helping people, especially, like, I just have such a heart for people now. Like, I can't help but want to reach out and help. If I see somebody that's in a tough spot, I'm quickly there to be like, well, what do you need, or what can I do for you? I just want to be there for them, because that one person, especially, that was there for me in my worst place, made the huge life-altering outcome for me, to see good things in people. So I want to be that glimpse for people. And what it is that's God in people. He had God in him, in his love that I was able to see. And now through me, I just want people to see God in me and be able to feel that love of God through me. Because everybody deserves to feel God's love, and truthfully, he wants everybody to feel that. That's why we get these random people in our lives at random times that are just like little random angels, God to me is my Savior. He is my rescuer. He is the one that came in and loved me when I was unlovable, that showed me that I was worth something, that I was worth saving. And even when I didn't think I was worth saving, he was worth saving. So God is just like my saving grace. He's my hope in life again, and my hope for others as well, because I know how amazing God is. He completely transformed my life, and I know he can completely transform your life too. Bye.